You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast with Jody Livingston and Chris Trent, episode number 87.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now, your hosts, Jody Livingston and Chris Trent.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening wherever you are and wherever this finds you. Thanks for making this podcast today a part of your day. We especially want to welcome you if it's your first time checking out the show, a new listener. Welcome. We're glad you're here. And if you are coming on back, still listening, man, thanks for hanging with us, especially if you're a member of our super secret podcast group. We're glad you're here as well. Great show today. Show notes you can find today at thelongerhaul.com/episode 087. It's thelongerhaul.com/episode 087. There'll be a few notes.
Gosh, Jody, you do all that so well. It's just like you have it memorized. I mean, you just roll through the whole, it's just you do a good job, man. I'm just saying.
Thanks. I've done it 87 times, not counting the times we've messed it up.
Yes, which we've done for sure. So, well, hey, Jody and I are a couple of youth pastors, man. Jody lives in California. I live in Georgia, and we've been friends for a little while now. We are both committed to longevity, and that's why we do this podcast. But ultimately, we're both still hanging out with teenagers, and we just believe in what youth pastors are doing, and we hope to help you experience longevity, both in your current church and potentially as a career, if you decide to do that for the long haul. And
which we assume you would, since you're listening to this podcast.
Since you're listening to the podcast, yeah.
If at this point in the podcast you're realizing you don't want to do that, then you may have accidentally downloaded the wrong podcast.
So lots of pictures of Jody in California as he's learning the ways of California at Jody Livingston, if you want to go on the social media. And then if you've never gotten enough pictures of people going to Disney World, you can check me out at Chris Trent. That's pretty, you would think there would be more youth ministry related postings, but there's pretty much none.
Nope.
So
very little.
Yeah. So that's where if you're interested, but you could also connect with us there if you had a question or something.
And the super secret podcast group. That's where you will find ministry things over on Facebook.
That stuff's in there. It's great. It's like 220 something people now. It's amazing. It's really cool.
So the Longer Haul is our page, and then we got the group. Yeah, it's a great group. We love those guys.
Good times.
People.
Hey man, you good? Life good for you in California?
Yeah.
You visited some cool place. What was you're like, I really do, in all seriousness, I feel like every time I look at you or your wife's Facebook or anything, you guys are like on some new California adventure. What was the place you just went to?
Walker Canyon. Yeah.
Walker Canyon.
So right now, at the time of this recording, if you're listening to it live, California is in the middle of what they're calling the super bloom, because we've had a ton of rain in SoCal. And so like once a decade, the California poppies come out in just crazy fashion. Like you can go online and Google, there's pictures from satellites that can see the bloom. It's just, there's so many of them. So yeah, we went down to see that, and it was nice, man. We got there early, so we beat the crowds. And then, and there's but maybe the highlight of the day was there's a huge Volkswagen junkyard there in the same town. And so I got to go over and talk to guys about that and look at parts for the V-dub. So I've seen about that, man.
That sounds like a highlight, really.
Listen, man, I've read about this junkyard forever, and to be like an hour away, oh my gosh. First trip of many.
And you recently acquired a Volkswagen minivan or van. What do you call this thing?
It's a bus, the Westfalia 72. So I had a Beetle. You remember the Beetle? Like I had that forever. Yeah. I had the Beetle.
I never saw it in person though.
Really?
I didn't. Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. I sold it when we moved here to California, and then when we got here, I now have a 72 Volkswagen Westfalia.
You need to fix that puppy up, and we need to do like a coast to coast tour. Like we just drive all over the United States.
And Instagramming about it?
Yeah, and just have a blast. I mean, it would be so much
Start a whole new, there's people doing that. Instagram channels. It's fun. I don't know what we would call it.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's pretty awesome. And then, so one of the things, it's funny because I had this conversation the other day with somebody because we have gone and seen and done a lot since we moved here. And part of that's because I think when we were leaving Georgia and even when we moved, I mean, I've lived in a few states. I always leave with regret of things we didn't do or see that we kept saying one day we'll go see that.
Yeah.
So when we were coming here, we made the epic road trip across with the family, which was super fun. And my wife and I just said, let's never say one day we'll do that again. Let's just do it. And so
that's cool. So do y'all have kind of a mental list going of things you can do? That's cool.
We've got, and it's growing because we keep hearing about new things. And then some things like Tuesday, we went down to Huntington Beach. And so that was fun. And then Thursday, we were went to see the poppy things. But yeah, we want to get up to Yosemite and Sequoia. I want to get up to Zion. That's not too far away.
Dude, I watched last night Free Solo, and I about lost my freaking mind. Have you know about this movie?
No.
Do you know about this documentary? The guy, Alex something and other, that free climbed.
Oh, yeah, that's stupid. That's stupid.
Dude, Jody, I'm not even kidding. My stomach was literally hurting while I was watching this movie.
Mm-mm.
I was getting sick. I was getting queasy watching this guy. Oh my gosh, it's good. And there's got to be several moments in there that potential clips, illustrations for this stuff.
I won't be doing that.
Good.
We'll be firmly on the ground.
Oh my
looking up. But we have a running list of things.
He climbed a half dome or whatever it's called. Yeah,
also, it may be worth mentioning for folks because we had this conversation. I think some people think we probably just make all this stuff up to have stuff to talk about on the podcast. This is conversation we have regularly, but that's not the case. We
never talk.
We text a lot.
Yeah,
but we intentionally save some conversation for the podcast.
Yeah, sure, no doubt. Yep. It's good. Yeah, I love the fact that you guys are, and I'll say this, man. There is a lesson in that, in the sense that, you've moved out to California. You didn't necessarily know you were going to move out to California. You took a couple of your, you took your kids out. You took all your kids, but a couple of them are teenagers on top of that, and you're moving them out to California from Georgia literally all the way across the United States, right?
Yeah.
But y'all are making the best of it. You're trusting God. took you there for a reason.
It's been good, man.
And you're living adventure, and there's something to say about that whenever you have to move to a new town where not every rural town is going to be as fun as California and have a beach and Disneyland down the road, or the Volkswagen junkyard, because that's just amazing.
It is amazing.
But I'm sure your town does have a junkyard of some type. So, so yeah, make the best of it. That's a good word. Hey, you know what we have, Jody, that I love? We have amazing people that appreciate what we do, and they're encouraging, and they help make this thing happen from a financial standpoint, because we don't make money doing it. It actually costs money to do the podcast because of mailing lists and web hostings and all of that. And YM360 has been helping us for a little while now, and I love these guys. And I want to drill down on one particular resource that they're offering that is phenomenal. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I think they're doing it because they did this for a little while. They're still doing it at Christmas. They do this Christmas devotional thing, right? This Advent devotional. Okay. Well, now they have one called "It Is Finished," a day-by-day account of Jesus's last week on earth.
Yeah, for Easter.
And you talk about a great resource to put into the hands of your kid. The thing is only like $5, and you could get them for your kids. Maybe you could just buy them, or you could get them and charge your kids $5 a piece or whatever, and all of y'all will read through it at the same time. I mean, they're great. Your parents will appreciate it as well. I think there's a quality discount. If you get 10 or more, they're only $4.50 a piece, So, in order to get them, you're going to need to order them though pretty soon, like by April 4th, I think, because I think they start on April 11th. And
Yeah.
it's like a 10-day devotional is what it is. So I just can't, I'm telling you, man, I've used their stuff like this before, and it's really good. Really good. So
They do
I wanted
good
to drill
stuff.
down on that particular. Yeah. So YM360, and they'll connect you with this. And if you have any questions, just reach out to those guys, because they have just a ton of people that'll answer any questions you have. And
yeah, tons of good resources there. Use the promo code The Longer Haul.
Yeah,
and save 20%.
That's it. Also, big time thanks to the Georgia Baptist Student Ministry folks, Student Ministry Network. They also love youth pastors and are helping us make this happen as well. So,
Yep.
Big time thanks to those folks as well. And great
we like
resources
them.
there.
We like
Yeah,
them.
I like them too. So
Cool.
yeah, man, great podcast today. I love the interview we did with Alan Smith. He and his wife have written this book called Let's Go. I love, he'll tell you why he wrote the book, and it's just good, like where this thing comes from. And the fact that he started this thing, he basically wrote a whole lot of this, not as a book, but he wrote it for his youth pastor because he was mentoring a youth pastor. And man, when something like that comes from the heart, a lot of times it's gold, you know what I'm saying? And so,
yeah.
So I'm really excited. The conversation was great. We jump into a few things related to the book. We couldn't do all of it, but it's good. So,
yeah, be sure you stick around at the very end of the podcast, and we talk about how you can win something.
Win something. That's it. Yep.
Cool. All right, you ready to jump in here?
Ready. Let's do it.
All right. Here is this week's interview with Alan.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Well, hey, Alan, welcome to the podcast, man. How do you feel about being the feature presentation?
I'm excited. It feels good. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, good deal. Well, hey, friends, we have Alan Smith with us here. He is a youth pastor at heart, and he has written a book. And so we invited this guy on. We had some of our friends reach out to us and tell us about him. Alan, Jody, the three of us have never met before, but you live in Athens, Georgia. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, man. And so you've written this book called Let's Go. It's creating and sustaining a thriving student ministry. And the Longer Haul, man, we're all about that type of stuff. But before we jump into what you've written, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into youth ministry, and how did that all get started? Maybe even a little bit about, just kind of your past as far as how you met Christ and some stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. Well, I'm from Georgia originally, and I've grown up in church my entire life. Accepted Christ when I was 12 in Sunday school, and pretty much been connected to the church the entire time through that. And in college, I really got involved in student ministry, doing DiscipleNows all over the state of Georgia. Just pretty much every weekend that I could go, I would do some type of event, whether it was a fall retreat or DiscipleNow that I heard about.
Do you know John Massara, by the way?
I do. I just met him. He lives in Athens as well.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, and so he was on our podcast like 3 episodes ago. I think.
I listened. When I saw that, I wanted to hear what he had to say. So yeah, I like John.
Yeah, cool.
I met him while I was in college, and then I had lunch with him probably about a year ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so I did those for a while, and then while I was in college, I actually worked camp. Worked at camp, Centrifuge, Lifeway Camp, and just really loved that. Got plugged in to doing student ministry just in the camp world for a long time.
Were you ever up at Ridgecrest?
I trained at Ridgecrest a few times, but I never worked camp there. I worked at Glorietta, was the last place I worked.
Yeah, I trusted Christ at Centrifuge in 1987 at Ridgecrest.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. That's awesome.
I think a lot of people trust Christ at Ridgecrest because they have to walk up and down all those mountains.
It could be true.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's great. And then after I graduated from college, I went to seminary And while I was in seminary, I got engaged to my wife. And so we began looking for places to work. And I found out this church that I knew a few people that worked at called Greystone was looking for a student pastor. And I jumped in there or both feet first. It was fun. It was a cool church. It's been a fun experience. And so it was about 1,000 people or so, about 1,200. So it was a larger student ministry, and it was a fun experience. I'd never done student ministry before, in the church setting. And so it was a little bit of a jolt kind of when I jumped in, but it was fun.
Working all those camps really help you prepare for that, though, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. It was, and one of the chapters I wrote in the book was called "Make It Fun." I mean, that's what camp was all about, making it fun, and then relating that to Jesus and breaking down those barriers. And so it definitely prepared me for student ministry full time.
I love the people that I've known that have worked in camp ministry. We've done YM360's Generate for a while, and we did Student Life for a while, and I've known a lot of guys that have worked at, Centrifuge as well. And man, such a great training ground for because you have to be organized. You have to be willing to work hard. You have to be able to get along with a variety of different people. And in the midst of that, you also have to be pointing kids to Jesus. I mean, it's great. It's a good training ground for youth ministry.
Oh yeah.
I love it. Well, let's talk about the book for a second. You and your wife actually wrote the book together, and which is awesome. Wendy, when I did my book, Wendy contributed a ton as well, but you guys wrote this thing together, both y'all's names. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So what in the world made you decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to write a book? Because you've actually changed roles recently. Is that correct? You're not a youth pastor in the sense of that's not your title anymore. That changed. And so what caused you to write this thing?
Yeah. And so
it was the money, right? It's the money.
That is exactly right. It was all about the money. I mean, yeah, that's what
I'm joking with Alan because before we were talking about the fact, not a lot of money book writing. But anyway, it's more about the calling. So,
yeah. Well, one of the main reasons we wrote the book, we had taken notes on our student ministries, had written down things, and I had just met with different student pastors and talking about different things just throughout the years. And I was excited about, helping them, and they helped me. And I had just interviewed a lot of student pastors as well, had a lot of information. And we had seen it work at 3 campuses. But the big deal was when I had a young student pastor who was 19 when he first started, super excited about ministry, super moldable. But I just really wanted to give him direction. And so we pretty much met every week for his first year in student ministry, just helping him and anything I could and just guiding him and what I had learned the past 5 years. And really, that's what this book is pretty much every time we would meet together, we would go through a chapter of the book. And from that experience, he's doing extremely well. He personally has tripled his student ministry at my campus, and it has been just incredible to see what he has done. And so from that, I realized that, hey, I actually probably need to put this information I have just into practice and write it down and just send it out to, anyone I can. Really want to help young student pastors kind of get started on the right foot.
What I love about that is it comes from a place of you not setting out to write a book and be an author, but it comes from a place of you originally just wanting to help a guy out and mentor a guy in youth ministry. And I'm guessing there's a moment where you start to kind of say, hey, well, this could actually be a book.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I never really set out to write a book. I mean, it was always something I would love to have done, but it wasn't until after this experience I had with Daniel, my student pastor, that I thought, hey, this could be something I could, create and write about.
Well, I mean, you had to write it before he did.
Exactly.
He was taking notes too.
That is exactly right.
Feed him to it.
That's amazing. Yep. Well, hey, Jody and I, you sent us a copy of the thing, and we both have looked through it, and so thought we might just drill down on. And I do recommend the book. I mean, it's what I love about it is it really is coming from the heart of a guy who loves youth ministry, and I could tell just by the stuff that I've read in it, and then also there's just some good. I'm going to use the word basic, and I don't mean that in a, oh, it's so basic, but in a foundational, maybe to be a better word, some good foundational type reminders of what helps to make a youth ministry strong, which ultimately, as we're doing the longer haul in youth ministry, this is going to help you experience longevity, both in the church you're serving and potentially as a career. So drilling into just a few of these things here, there's a chapter called "It's Not About You." And I love this chapter, this idea that you can't do it all by yourself. So where did that chapter come from? I just realized that I'm clapping. Can y'all hear that?
No, but I'm impressed.
Yeah. I'm talking with my hands right now, and I feel like it's going to show up in the podcast. We're so professional here, Alan. I hope it's not threatening to you.
I love
Chris
it.
gets excited. Just wait till he takes it up a level from clapping. It gets crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. So in that It's Not About You chapter, remember you can't kind of do it by yourself. What helped you to realize that for yourself, that you needed help and that you couldn't do it all on your own? And why would you say that's so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons I wrote that was because I thought I could do it all by myself initially, until I realized I couldn't, and there was no way I could do everything that needed to get done. And so I started realizing that it's not about me. I think so often when we look for that student pastor in a church, or when we think about the young student pastor, we want the one that is big up front, that can organize everything, it can do all the parts, but you realize that not one person can do that. And if you try to do that, you're going to get burnt out, and you're going to get burnt out quick. And so that's why I really wrote that chapter. And that's even the first chapter in the book. So I want everyone to realize, and especially young student pastors, that if you want to reach more people, if you want to have a bigger impact for the kingdom, that you need to have people alongside of you. Number one, to help where you're not strong. Also to even just help with different ministries in your student ministry itself. And so that's one of the reasons I wrote that. And I mean, that's the job of a pastor in general. In Ephesians 4, we're here to equip people to do the work of ministry. And so if we're not equipping people, we're not equipping volunteers, then it's not going to go very far, and we're not going to go very far either.
So I think most youth pastors start out excited about, what they're doing, whether they're new to ministry or they're new in their current role, or it's maybe a new church they're starting. Everybody starts out excited. Everybody's running ahead. How do you? What advice do you give to a brand new youth pastor who's maybe it's not even the sense that they feel like they want it to be all about them. They're just really excited, and I think that sometimes the tendency is to just run ahead of folks. Where's the tension in that? How do you encourage those guys to slow down, make sure they've got buy-in? How are they recruiting well? Like, I know there's a lot to that.
Yeah. So I can use the example I had for my student pastor, Daniel. I really tried to show him the future, and he was doing really well. He was building relationships and getting in the community and doing great stuff. But I really showed him the future. I said, down the road, this is going to work for 6 months, but in a year, you're going to get burnt out. In a year, you're not going to be able to talk to all these students. You're not going to know every student's, what's going on in their life and all these type things. You're going to need some help. You're going to need people that love building those relationships and different things like that. And so I think helping, young student pastors and even just different people see the vision for what's going on, and even just being a few steps ahead of them, just helping them see, like, listen, this is going to work in the short run, but that's not the game plan here. The game plan is for the long haul, like this podcast is about, and it's about how can we make sure that you're prepared for the future and not just what's going to work right now. And so I think that was the kind of key factor in writing this chapter.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that. The idea that part of that is when you can get to that point where you realize it's not about me. It's you have to be willing to think about, well, I'm not just worried about my success rate. I love that. It's not about just right now, but I have to prepare for the future, and I can't keep this pace. I can't keep this going. We can't sustain this just by ourselves. That's really huge.
Yeah.
I think that's important because I think most youth pastors that we talk to, especially young ones, most is probably an overstatement to be fair, but a lot, I'll put it that way. They're not really thinking down the road as much as they're not looking very far ahead, and so I think having that mentality, encouraging that mentality, man, I mean that just that alone of realizing that everything you're doing now is building for the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a huge difference.
What would you say, Alan, to the guy or gal listening though that is saying, "Okay, I hear you, and I actually kind of like that, but my pastor or my deacons or my elders or my youth workers, they feel like they've hired me to do this." Like, what could we maybe say? And the three of us can all kind of chime in on this, but to those folks that they're like, "Yeah, I get that it's not about me, but I think my church thinks it is."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And yeah, I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on that as well. I mean, from my experience, I think, again, what I have seen in my ministry career, it's about casting vision and helping people understand the game plan and helping people understand what's going on. Like, hey, I'm great at these aspects and I'm going to be, willing to do this, but I can't be the go-to person for every single kid, in my ministry. And I want to bring people along to help that process. And if it's only about me, then it's only going to go so far. I can only take it so many people. And we only have so many relationship spots in our life for kids and for adults and everything. But if we bring people along with us and if we have volunteers, we have leaders that are actually good at this as well, then it's really going to be more impactful than just one person doing it. But I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I always jump in, Jody, to this part too, and I think we probably have talked about this before. It's being able to cast that vision also for people that get involved. Not all of them, but so many of them love it, and they are empowered by it because they're. And I think, forgive me for the Jesus juke here, but their ultimate, it's because they're being the body of Christ in that moment and they're serving out of their giftedness. Mm-hmm. So you find someone who is willing, this sounds very mundane, but is willing to help you clean up after a Wednesday night. That can sound like the details that could come across as, well, that's what you're getting paid for. But in all actuality, you find somebody that's got the spiritual gift of serving, and that's a sweet spot for them. They would rather, and they leave feeling like they've done something awesome for Jesus, And I think that's being able to figure out a way to cast vision to that pastor or to that church. The asterisk there would be, though, to not be lazy. You still have to work. You can't use this as an excuse. It'd be easy to kind of jump into this and go, "Oh yeah, well, I want to empower people to serve." I don't want to do anything, but that would be the needle swinging the exact opposite way or whatever. But I don't know. What do you think, Jody?
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, obviously, and you're right. I think this is something that probably comes up a lot in conversation. I'm sure it's something that we've talked about. I think there's a balance there, and let me flesh this out because this may sound like I'm disagreeing. Where it's not about you, but it is about you, in the sense that you're never going to be able to escape the expectation that you're the one that was hired, and so depending on your church culture and particularly the vision and direction of your pastor and the expectations there, that's going to look a little different from place to place. And so I think the key is to be able to lead well and leverage your volunteers, but not, and this is going to sound super unspiritual and selfish, but
Jody, for the record, I'm used to you sounding unspiritual, so keep going. Go ahead.
Good. All right, good. Then we're perfect. Don't want to break the trend. I think people still need to look to you, and it still needs to feel like it's your ship that you're driving. Because I think if people start feeling like you're not steering the ship, or you're not leading the charge, or you're not out front. I think that's where maybe you could start fielding some criticism, because they're not going to be privy to all those behind the scenes details of people helping clean up and people helping set up and people, and so you still have to leverage those moments and opportunities when you are out front, when you are visible, to clearly continue to cast that vision and talk about what's happening in the ministry, and kind of garner some excitement about what's taking place, and make sure you're communicating those things both up the chain and out to the church as a whole. Because I think the temptation is to be so focused on your ministry that's right there that you're doing, and your volunteers, that maybe we don't always do a great job of communicating our wins that we're having.
I think we're getting into some good weeds here, because Jody, what you're saying, man, and Al, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this idea as well. I love this because I think it's a little bit of a challenge for someone who is not yet seasoned in working with people to understand this balance of, I'm not going to do it all myself. I'm going to have volunteers, but yet being able to utilize volunteers in a way where it doesn't come across as I'm not involved at all. And then going back to my earlier illustration, just as an example, when I said Wednesday night cleaning up, I think it's great if you had volunteers that stuck around and straightened up the youth center, cleaned up the whatever, your checklist is. But that doesn't mean that you can say, yeah, I've got a volunteer to do that. And 8:30 rolls around and you're done with your part and your volunteers are still cleaning, that you go, okay, see y'all later.
Yeah.
And you walk out the door, because that's where the needle shifts too far to the other side. It's figuring out a way to, I've got people helping me with this and these things. And it's, it could be a ton of different, that we can come up with so many different examples here. But it's also, I'm still engaging in that moment. I'm still thanking and valuing those people. You've got that one worker maybe that makes coffee every Sunday morning or whatever, that you're taking a second to acknowledge those, and you're valuing and you're acknowledging. And that's where I think the temptation, maybe before you get seasoned, would be, I've given that away. I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's not what we mean. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Good deal. Okay, we're changing the world. Great, awesome.
And I think on this, I think Jody had some great points. Y'all both did. I like those, and I think it also, this chapter pertains differently to different size churches, different scales, and different things like that as well. And it's going to look differently for the 12-person student ministry than it will for the 400-person student ministry. It's just going to look different, and so that's just kind of I think it's going to be different in different situations as well.
Yeah, I think the key here, and this is where I would encourage the key one, and this is something I think I've even realized more and more lately. And one of the things I wish I had realized and known earlier, and this is probably, this is a fairly new thing I feel like that I'm learning or recognizing, is if I could speak to a very young youth pastor, I would say to them, one of the things that maybe I think we don't speak enough into young youth pastors is be intentional and get very, very good at working and dealing with people. And not just students, and not just, and we talk about being intentional with parents and being intentional with but just in general, how do you interact with people? How do you persuade people? How do you sell vision? How do you navigate, conflict? How do you, all of those type of skills are things that generally come with time, but certainly there's so many good resources and books out there to help you grow in that area. And I think unfortunately, we don't often have that on our radar. in a very broad sense. We read a lot about the students we minister to. There's a ton of resources out there on parents. There's a ton of resources out there, on your volunteers, but just in general, like navigating difficult conversations, navigating, how to little things, even like how to lead an effective meeting and how to, just all those types of things, I think get lost in the mix. And the sooner you get better at that, the more effective you're going to be.
I have a theory, and I'm going to test it right here. So, Alan, when you started out and you first started doing student ministry there, who were a couple of adults that you would have called? And you don't have to say their full names or whatever. It's up to you. Who were a couple of adults that you knew that were your go-to adults that you could seek, that you had conversation with, and you would almost consider them friends?
Yeah. So, like,
did those names comes to mind? Do those names come to mind pretty quick for you?
Yeah. So, for can like that were volunteers, or that I could just ask advice for?
Both but people that were in your church that had ties to your youth ministry, though. Yeah.
So, you're talking about as a student pastor. Yeah, I have some quick ties. Number one, I had these two people that were about my age that jumped in serving. Okay. They were young and they were excited and they were ready to go, and whatever I needed, they would, drop what they were doing. They would leave work early to come help. And then honestly, my family pastor at the time, and I mentioned her in my book, that she was pretty much anything we asked for, she was going to make sure it got done.
Yeah.
And she was our biggest advocate. And it's one of the main reasons that the student ministry grew like it did, because she was willing to do whatever and willing to help out. She had been in ministry over 20 years by that time. And so she was willing to help out and say, hey, here's some suggestions. Here's what you need to do. Now, make it great.
Jody, I know that both of us would have that same thing. Like, we would have adults that we could point to in our, mid-20s when we're first starting out. For you, when you were 15, so early.
But it's been a while since you made a joke.
Here's what I'm saying, and it related, because I think this is huge. What you were talking about, Jody, when it comes to understanding adults and getting to know adults, and being able to talk with adults. Part of that is you keying in on a couple of adults. And I had that, man, when I think back to my North Lake days, my first full-time youth ministry days, I had several adults that were youth workers that I went to lunch with on a regular basis, that I had conversations with. They had kids in our student ministry, and it helped me to learn how to navigate that adult side of things. Yeah, I was still focused on teenagers and all that, but it helped me to realize how to work with these people. Yeah, and so that's huge. Well, hey, there are a couple other great chapters here, man. The second one, and I think if you've listened to us much at all, friends, this is huge for Jody and I. We think this is so important, but you've got a chapter about the details when it comes to longevity in your current church and long term. There's no question that the details matter. What have you learned about being organized? Any tips that you would just kind of throw out there? You mentioned Evernote in the book. Jody and I both use Evernote a ton. And so what have you learned, man? Like, why is that such a big deal to you?
Well, the best thing that I ever did was I married an organizer. And so,
you're cheating. That's not fair.
I cheated.
You don't even have the spiritual gift. You married the spiritual gift.
I did. And I've had to develop it more because, as my wife gently nudges me that direction, I'd say. But she did an incredible job she loves the details. That was where she lived. She lived in the weeds and loved that stuff. And it was great for us because I loved the bigger picture and being up front. And so she was able to create the systems and the structures that we needed. And that's another thing that I think, like you were mentioning, that really helps the student pastor, be able to expand just his influence in everything. When he has a great system and structure set up, that way there's more people know what's going on, that more people can see the vision, and you're able to reach and influence more people because those systems and structures are set up. And I would say from learning those in the student ministry world is even, is gone over to what the job I do now and as a campus pastor role and even different things, just learning those details and how important details are in just anything in life in general.
Can I retitle the book or that chapter, just that chapter? Can we change it to "Do Your Job"? Can we just change it to that?
Yes.
That is
Yes.
okay. Do your job. I'm going to write a book called that. Dibs. One day.
Got it.
Do your
Yeah.
job.
Hold my breath.
There you go.
Oh, see, that was a little.
Oh,
See, I told you,
yikes.
Alan. I told you, he's
Wow.
brutal right now.
Jody, that was quick.
Hey, one book at a time. One book at a time. I just like to point out that since I moved to California, we have made, and even guests have made an increasing number of reference to weed being in the weeds.
Oh gosh.
I'm not really sure if that is a direct correlation or not.
Making fun of California people like that, Jared.
Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh, those are your people, man.
They're my people.
Those are your people. So yeah, the details. We there's so many. I think we even have a podcast about being organized. And I think that's huge. Alan, what's something that you use daily that you feel like is just huge to help you? Is there a technology or a system that you feel like the way you start your day, or something, a certain kind of list you keep or anything like that you might share with us that would benefit someone?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely keep a list each morning. I actually switched. I hope this is not a negative plug. I like Evernote, but I actually switched back to notes on just like the regular phone and, on your computer and stuff. And I actually have a list of things I try to accomplish. And you've all probably heard of these things, but I try to have things that are most important that I need to get done that day. And I try to make sure I attack those first. And there's a thing over here. I am a Georgia Bulldog. We talk about attack the day. And so I think about that each morning, like, how am I going to attack this day?
We all know that the Georgia Bulldogs made up that idea of attacking the day. But anyway,
I know, exactly. That's
like Auburn made up all in. Come on, people.
I know. But yeah, and so that's the thing. I try to make sure, and I even try to help other people that I talk with. Like, hey, what are the main things you need to get done today? Because as you know, I mean, as a student pastor, when you wake up in the morning, if you probably have 3 or 4 texts from your students that morning or the night before, with different things, and you might have an email you need to get to. But if you can have those lists of things you need to jump on first, that's a big deal, and that helps you, win the day.
It's good. It's good. You also you also spend a little time in the book talking about the importance of student pastor groups. I think the word we would use a lot also is like the idea of networking, the need for networking. Have you made that work? And is that something that's come to you, or have you had to pursue it? A little bit of both. What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so that came to me. That actually was probably one of the most important things when I jumped into student ministry that helped me out. I probably learned the most from everything that I've learned was through those student pastor groups. We had a really strong group when I worked when I first got to the main campus where I work currently. But we had a group there that about 20 to 30 student pastors meeting monthly.
That's a big network. Wow.
Yeah, and from small churches to large churches, pretty almost mega churches. We had everybody in between, and so that was probably one of my favorite things every month, getting with them. And man, I just brought a notebook of questions each time, and I would just ask, and they would help me out. They would answer. They would show me, hey, here's the newest technology of how to follow up with students, or here's the best book you can read on that question. And man, I'll be honest, like that. And I actually emailed and called this guy recently after I got done with the book and just thanked him for how much he invested in me. And just even he was 5 years older than I was, and he just said, hey man, let's go to breakfast sometime and talk about your new role, and whatever I can help to be a resource, let me know. And man, I'll be honest, like that was probably one of the biggest and most important things of my student ministry career.
I love what you're saying about the guy that took you to breakfast. And what came to my mind right then was, for our friends that are listening that are a bit seasoned now, or maybe you are in your, current role and you've been there for a few years, whether there is or is not a network in your community, when the new youth pastor moves into town, for you to be that person that reaches out to them and welcomes them, huge.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Oh yeah.
And
you
will
have
ultimately will help you. Go ahead. My bad.
Yeah. Well, no, you have so much more to offer than I think we think we do, if that makes sense.
That's a good word.
You know, like, because this guy was like, Alan, I don't know if, I can help you out a ton. And after those, year of going to breakfast and just being that resource, he was like, man, I don't know if I'm helping out. And I was like, well, Jody, listen, yes, you have helped me out a ton.
Of course, his name was Jody.
I know.
Yes.
I just thought about that.
Gosh, see?
Yeah, there it is. Just a great name. So, but I think so often we might shy away from that. Even myself, I've kind of thought about that, but like, we need it. And God has called us to do that. He's called us to help each other out and be there for one another. And it's just, it's so helpful and rewarding, I think, on both ends when we're able to do that.
Well, I think if nothing else, recognize that you have knowledge of the community that the new guy doesn't have but desperately needs, right? So you may not feel like you're an expert at student ministry, but you know people, like you know who the go-to people are at the schools, or you know where the retreat centers are, or you know where, you just, those types of things that usually take forever to figure out and navigate, you can immediately be that bridge for that guy coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, and just be a good friend, period. I mean, just having a friend sometimes is part of it, just because you speak the same language and it's a tribe of people, So having those friends. I would say this also, for our friends listening, that the flip side of that is, if you don't have that person that is reaching out to you, and this is a little harsh, but I'm being candid and honest. I would say that it's a little bit of a cop out to just sit back and go, well, nobody's reaching out to me. Oh. That if there's not a network in your community, your town that you live in, and if there's nobody, that has welcomed you with open arms, it'd probably be pretty important for you to be the guy that start to go, hey, I just want to have lunch, no strings attached. And I will tell you, that'll help you with it when it comes to building a network, is to go into that with a commitment of no strings attached. I'm not trying to get you to come to my concert that I'm throwing and help my numbers work. I'm not trying to get you to do this. I'm not trying to get you to do that.
D-Now together.
What?
D-Now together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may lead to that. I mean, it may.
But don't start there, right?
You don't want to start there, and you don't want to start by showing up with your flyer for your event, your see you at the pole event or whatever. But rather just say, hey, and being the person that starts that, because you could do it, and it's people that find value in it will come, and people that won't, maybe when you first start out, kind of do a off-campus thing, maybe not have it at your church, but we're all going to meet at Chili's or whatever, or McDonald's. I don't care. And
Chuy's. You get to meet at Chuy's.
I could, Jody, but you could not. So,
that's true.
In fact, Alan and I may connect at some point, go to Chuy's and send you a big old picture of us just drinking.
Oh, that would be amazing. Thank you. Please. Please.
Jalapeno ranch. I mean, so I'm just saying, like, it's important for you to know that that's a need that you don't really realize you have, and you can make it happen. If nobody else, if there's not a network now, if there's a network that already exists, don't roll up into town and being like the Lone Ranger, like, hey, I'm starting a network, I'm going to step on everybody's toes. Find out what's going on and come alongside that. But yeah.
Well, how would they do that, Chris? How would they find out if there's an existing network?
Well, I think you just have to make a phone call to any youth pastor you can find out about and say, hey, is there a network? Depending on what, denomination you are, or what type of church you go to, if, in Baptisty world, I know there's folks that you can ask that question to, in as far as like the local, mission board type people or whatever, and I'm assuming that if you're Methodist or whatever that is, that there's potential resources there. But you just got to do your homework. I think, but calling any guy and go, hey, did any guys ever get together? Anybody ever get together and just hang out as youth pastors? And again, it may be a thing also where you don't overshoot that. Hey, I want to start getting together every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks and having prayer together at 6 a.m. Maybe that's a little much. Maybe it's more, hey, you know what? I just want to start getting to know. And so when I was in Garland, that's what I did. I mean, I knew I needed it as a 30-year-old, and I think I was really more like late 20s, but I just started calling guys and making friends, and then even here when I got to Garland, when I got to here to Marietta, and I was doing just middle school ministry, and I'm in Atlanta, so there's enough middle school only pastors in the area. Mm-hmm. But I didn't start out with, hey, let's have a big meeting. I started out with, I took each one of them to lunch and just kind of hung out and started building friendship. And then all of a sudden we had a little network and we started hanging out for a while, and then they all moved away. So,
well, truth be told, that the reason that we're both on this podcast is because of the network.
That's where we met, was back when you lived here. Yeah. I mean, we met through the Noonday Association, network thing. So, yeah.
Well, I remember showing up and going, and asking, calling guys. And that's exactly how I started. Like, hey, can we grab coffee? Can I take you to lunch? And realizing that maybe in the past there had been, or there'd been some other, but there wasn't really a strong, consistent network in place. And so we started it. I mean, we just started meeting and it was really kind of informal at first. And we would, it looked different, and it changed as people came in and out of the community and out of different ministries. And I would say a lot of what we have done on this podcast, and even several folks who have been on the podcast, came as a result of that network. So I think it's huge.
It's good.
Yeah. Y'all are so much smarter.
Oh yeah.
Y'all are so much smarter than me. Like I did not, I'll be honest. I was a young guy, mid-20s, thought I could do it myself. Somebody invited me and I was like, man, I don't need these other guys. Like I'm doing it myself. This was, and honestly, the guy was like, well, hey, I think that day they had Chili's was like, they brought Chili's in, and they were like, hey, we're going to meet together and come eat some lunch with us. And I was like, man, I love Chili's. So I'll go check that out. And I showed up, and man, just to hear the wisdom, some of those guys, again, had been going for 20 years. I realized that day, oh my gosh, like this is what I needed, and this has so helpful for me. And so I know some people that are listening to this podcast, maybe you're the one that needs to start it. Maybe there's a bunch of young guys in your community that need the help. I mean, I just still can remember these guys, and they've texted me and called me after the book came out, and they were like, this is great, man. So thankful for it. And I just would text them and be like, well, a lot of this information is stuff that you shared with me, 5 years ago when I was just getting started. And I just want to say thanks, and that was one of the things. Somebody invited me. It wasn't my idea.
Is that where you met Mike Ricks for the first time?
I met Mike I was doing a D-Now at his church when I was in college.
Great.
And then just stayed connected with him. I actually played softball
He's
with him.
the same area over there that you're in, right?
He is. Yeah, he is.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Good deal.
I think we had that issue too. Like even with our network that we had, like sometimes it was hard to get the younger guys to come for whatever reason. And then they would show up, and it was really hard to get them to stop asking questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But it's good. Like, I think we all wanted that we weren't like complaining about it. They just realized, man, I didn't recognize how good this was.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So Alan, you're a big time pastor now. So campus pastor. Mm-hmm. You're in grown up world. Serious question though. What have you learned now that you've kind of put on a different hat? What have you learned about being a pastor that could help us get along better or have better relationships with our pastors?
From me and my student pastor currently is just communication. I think I just assumed that my pastor and I were on the same page with the vision, where we were going, why we did things, those things, and even just like little insights into the ministry. But now being on the other side, being an adult pastor, I guess, whatever you want to call it, that sometimes you see the student pastor, you see an event happen, or you see something happen, and you're a little clueless on why that might have went down the way it went down, or what exactly is going on. And so I just think communication is key. Anytime that you can just tell your pastor, like, hey, here's quick updates, here's what we're doing this week, just want to make sure and then just the mission, vision, and even your heart behind it, it just helps out so much.
That's great, man. That's good.
Yeah.
Jody, anything else on that?
No, that's a good word.
Yeah, that's really good. Man, the book is great, and it's just
Thanks.
a good read. It's a quick read. And I mean that as a compliment. I mean, I think too often the chapters are short. As a guy who wrote a book that my chapters are short as well, sometimes I'm like, wait, what are you saying, man? Like you're saying, like it's not, but it's just, it's an easy read, and but you just get to the point quick, and there's all these little nuggets, and different folks are going to read it. So we big time recommend that, man. Thanks for coming on and talking about it for sure. We'll give you a chance to kind of tell where to find it in a second. But before we do, we want to ask you one of our big questions here. When you're youth pastor at heart, done youth ministry forever now, and you're still involved in youth ministry and doing what you do. What is one of your favorite memories in youth ministry? Like, it could be super awesome, spiritual. It could be super crazy, fun. It could be embarrassing. I don't know. What's one of your favorite memories in youth ministry? What jumps out to you? And there's a lot, I know, so it's hard to narrow down.
Yeah, no, there's a ton. I mean, I'll answer that one to answer also a question you're not going to ask, but I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it anyway. So I loved
podcast. He's asking his own questions.
Yeah.
What are we even here for?
That's my bad, but we'll see. Maybe bad answer, bad question. But I loved seeing my students leading out. Just to see them leading out. We had a big push for some leaders, like some of my high school leaders, to lead in the middle school ministry, or to sometimes speak on stage or do different things like that. But now, as these guys are in college or even have just graduated from college, seeing some of them like in ministry or seeing them at an event, or sometimes I'll go speak at their DiscipleNow, and just seeing them just using their gifts for ministry is just really, really, I don't know. It just makes me think back to when they were a snot-nosed sixth grader and trying to do everything they could to just mess up what I was trying to do for the event, or just leaving everything dirty or whatever. It was worth it. And that's what I remember the most, is just, I remember that little kid now as an adult doing ministry. And I just think, man, that was worth it. And it took 8 years to realize that, but it has definitely been a fun experience for me, just thinking back and then even seeing them now.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good.
Yep. Good stuff. Well, where can we find you out there in the social media world? And tell us where we can find the book.
Yeah, social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, just Alan Smith 633. And then the book is available on Amazon. Again, it's Let's Go, Creating and Sustaining a Thriving Student Ministry. And I don't think I said it well, and I don't know if I need to say this or not, but we wrote it with the idea of things I wish I knew when I started student ministry. And that's kind of the reason I wrote it that way. And I also wrote it short, again, because ideal for the young student pastor or going through something with your interns or those type things. Because again, I know my 19-year-old student pastor at the time even told me, he said, I'm not going to read a book very well. And I said, what if I wrote it really short, and there was really short chapters you could read right before a meeting, and then we could discuss? And he said, I might do that. And so that was one of the reasons the book is so short, with some just quick information, just kind of that he could read and get it done.
That's good, man. It's great.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. I like the questions at the end of each chapter too. I think that's helpful if you are taking somebody else through it. So if you've got it for somebody, like you're saying, intern or someone who's new or younger, it kind of gives you a good jumping off point. So it's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, hey, thanks for taking some time out and jumping on the podcast, man. We appreciate it very much. Thanks for what you're doing in student ministry world and for continuing to invest, even though you've been called over to the dark side. We'll still call you a friend.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. You guys make it easy. This is cool. And I also want to say thank y'all so much for what you're doing, for your ministry, and just everything, that you're investing in people, that you're investing in, even students, but also youth pastors as well. I mean, like we talked about, it's a tough road. And sometimes, it's that hard transition between, or hard trying to be in the student world and also be in the adult world as a parent and as a spouse. And so I really appreciate what you guys are doing and helping in your ministry as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, man. Appreciate it big time.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Well, y'all go out and check out the book. It's good. And thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. All right. Good man. Good interview. Alan's a good guy.
Yeah, man. I'm super thankful for this guy. I mean, just the fact that he has such a heart for students and, he's now serving as a campus pastor, but still clearly has a heart for student ministry and invested in youth pastors. And that's what I love about guys that have been doing youth ministry. Maybe they transition, but they still have a heart for youth ministry. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so on board with guys doing that at times. I mean, the pastors that I've met that started out as youth pastors, they just have a better heart towards youth ministry because they've lived it. So that's a good thing.
Yep.
Hey, he did. Once we finished recording the interview, I didn't want to put him on the spot in the interview because I forgot to mention it to him beforehand. But I was like, after we stopped recording, I said, "Hey, what about could we give a book away?"
Yeah.
And so we'll do that. And the way we'll do that is on the Facebook group. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group, just jump onto the Longer Haul Facebook group, not the page, but the group. Request to be a member, and we'll post book giveaway, and I'll put a link to his book as well that you can get on Amazon, and just like it or comment on it or whatever, and we will do a little drawing here at some point. So
yep,
good.
One more reason to join the podcast group, because we do like to give things away there. So it's fun. Well, hey, this was great. Let's do this again next week.
I'm in. It's great.
I mean, maybe not with Alan.
Yeah.
It might be redundant, but same questions again every week with Alan might get old, but
yeah. Well, they listen to us every week, so I don't know why that'd get redundant. I mean,
actually, maybe that would up the ante here. Maybe that would make it better. Maybe we should have Alan back.
Yeah, seriously. So cool. That's what we'll do. Every time we just start getting we'll add, when we start getting tired of hearing ourselves, we'll add another person.
Just add
somebody tired of hearing that person, we'll add another person.
That's right.
And before we'll have 10 people hosting the podcast.
Be like a youth ministry choir. Be like youth choir would go on tour, take a big bus around, stop and eat in mall food courts.
Hey, don't knock the mall food court, man. That's the best place in the world to stop for grub. I'll tell you that right now. So
that and Buc-ee's, right?
Buc-ee's. Shout out to all my Buc-ee friends. Yeah, they're awesome. Great. So, yep. All right.
Hey, thanks for hanging with us this week. We'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace out.
See you.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.